Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. These hallelujahs be multiplied.
Good morning and welcome to North Point Christian Church, our online service. We are so glad you are with us here this morning, wherever you happen to be from, whatever time of the week you happen to be listening. Just know that you are part of our fellowship here, and we are just so glad that you come here to join us. I want to start off this morning by I'll acknowledge the fact that I'm in the dark. It's not a problem with the lighting or anything. It's dark here in my little studio, and it's helpful for me to tell the story being here in the dark, because it goes back to some of my early days in youth ministry when I used to take kids out into the wilderness. And we would go out there to learn, about God and from His Word, and then from just the uniqueness of the setting of the wilderness, to be able to learn some life lessons that we would carry all the way through. And so there was this one time that I was out there, and I learned a lesson that I really have never forgotten. And it's that I was out on a thing that we called a solo, and a solo is you go out by yourself and spend 24, 48 hours just out in the wilderness by yourself. And I was that time really more of a participant than I was the actual leader of a trip. And it was kind of a training thing that I went on. And so I'm just out in the backcountry somewhere late at night, and it happened to be one of those nights that was full of cloud cover, and so we didn't have the moon, and to light everything up. And our leaders had taken not only our food and other things that you would have for survival. It was only for a couple of days, and one of the things they took from us was our flashlights. And it was a little, I would say, a little frightening during the day, thinking about not having a flashlight at night. But our leader and guide told us, you'll be okay. And you'll learn a lesson out there. And so I got to tell you, I did, because as the sun went down and as darkness kind of came in, it was frightening, because it was pitch black out in the wilderness. I mean, you could hear animals, you could hear the wind. It was this constant rustling of things, and you couldn't even turn your flashlight on to find out what the noise was or something that was going to be coming to you. But what I learned is the longer that I was out there, the more my eyes adjusted to the darkness. And after a period of time, I could see most everything. It was dim. I certainly wouldn't advocate hiking in complete darkness for very far, but I adjusted to it, and darkness wasn't as bad as what it was when I first started. And by the end of the evening, I was pretty much functioning in darkness just like I would in the light, because my eyes had made the necessary adjusting to be able to see just enough to be able to do the things that I wanted to do. Now, I'm going to turn the lights back on here, and we'll get kind of adjusted here in just a second, but I want you to kind of hear what I have to say about this, because this whole idea of adjusting to the darkness is kind of a frightening thing, to realize that we can exist in darkness, that it doesn't have to It doesn't have to completely control our lives. The darkness doesn't. And we can, we can learn how to function in the midst of it. And it really is kind of a frightening thing. In John, the Gospel of John, chapters 7 and 8, Jesus is teaching as he often did. And he was teaching some really important things to his disciples about darkness. The setting in chapter 7 is a thing called the Feast of Tabernacles. We as non-Jews don't know much about that at all, but they would have known all about it. It was a yearly festival that Jews participated in, where they spent 7 days remembering the 40 years that their people wandered in the wilderness as they left the slavery in Egypt, and it was a difficult, often kind of cruel life that they led, and so remembering it is just a super important part of who they were, their culture. And so during this 7-day festival, families would get together and they would build these little huts, little tent-like rooms. And it was they would build those to remember that that's what their forefathers lived in during their wandering in the wilderness, and how Jesus, and how God provided for them during those 40 years. And part of that was just living in these little huts. And so for these 7 days of the festival, they would go and they would build those and they would live in them for 7 days. And remember, it's really one of the most important festivals that they participated in. And during the festival, there were various ceremonies that they would do together as families. And one of them involved lighting these candelabras, these big, huge candle-like torches that would be set up around the temple and that would light up the entire courtyard each night. And by doing that, they would remember the pillar of fire that illuminated the path for them to travel on during their exodus. And what it turned into often was this huge kind of noisy party as the Jews remembered how great God was for them and how awesome His provision was for them, because they were to never ever forget. And it's pretty fascinating. I read a lot about it this week, and these lights would ultimately shine all the way through Jerusalem. People could see them. So we move in this story in John chapter 7 into John chapter 8. And after a night of celebrating, especially with the lights, the festival kind of lights that they had, we read that after that night of teaching, Jesus was out in the temple courtyard, and the Jewish leaders, their religious leaders, actually drug a woman into the center of the temple courtyard. In my imagination, I see her as naked or nearly naked, just sort of a mess, because we find out she had been drugged directly out of bed, and they drag her to the center of the temple court, throw her on the ground, and tell Jesus that they had caught this woman in the act of adultery, which was against Jewish law. And since Jesus had been claiming to speak with the authority of God himself, they wanted Jesus to condemn her and give them his approval to stone her to death. That's the setting. We're not going to go through all of that. It's a really dramatic moment in Jesus' life, and certainly for the life of this woman, as Jesus did not condemn her. But I want to think just for a second or two here about the Jewish religious leaders, these men who drugged this woman and threw her on the ground. This act, the more that I play it out in my own mind, this act just reveals an incredible darkness inside of them. I think it showed the twistedness of their minds and of their hearts, that they would do this in this manner. These were men who should have known better. These were God's men. Yet something so wrong and so despicable and so hurtful and dark had been allowed to grow in their heart, that they would treat another human being in this way. Remember what we read earlier at the very beginning of this, out of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 19. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They don't even know what makes them stumble. That is such a description of these men. But as they throw her on the ground and step back and wait for Jesus to say something, they certainly wanted to trap him in his words. They wanted to prove that he wasn't God. In that moment, Jesus embraces her and tells her to sin no more, sends them away, caught them in their own darkness. And then after this was done, I picture her walking off to her back to her home. Jesus in chapter 8, verse 12, he speaks these words right in this moment. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You know, to walk in darkness is how the Bible speaks of our natural condition. Ignorant, hard-hearted, calloused, self-centered. Always in Scripture, this contrast between light and darkness. And I am always remembered of that night out in the wilderness that I spent. That if you spend long enough in the darkness actually becomes natural. You adjust your lights; it doesn't even feel dark anymore. You exist just fine. That's what darkness does to us. And in the midst of their darkness, Jesus has the audacity to say, I am the light. You know, we have no internal light. Yeah, our eyes can adjust somewhat to darkness, but there is no light that emanates from inside of us. Yet today there's lots of talk about humans having this inner light that we need to follow. Buddhism says that God or gods are optional. What really matters is to look inside yourself. look within to find answers. They say, and we, as a culture today, I think we actually believe this. They say that the light of consciousness is within you. Well, to the less mystical, it sounds an awful lot like this. You need to trust yourself. You need to go with your gut. You need to follow your heart. It will never betray you. It seems so wise, but it is so contrary to the teachings of Jesus. The real problem is I can't help myself. I can't help myself. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. He doesn't say, oh, I can see the light, or I know the way to the light. He says, I am the light. Christian faith, our faith, is not wrapped up in propositions and principles. Rather, we are wrapped up in a person. That's what our faith is wrapped up in. And that person is Jesus. You take him out of the equation, we really have nothing but darkness. And the best we can do is to try to adjust our eyes and adjust our heart and adjust our lives to somehow get through. Jesus says, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Real life. What does it mean to follow? The Bible actually talks about 4 different ways to follow. A soldier who follows his or her captain. The captain says, go here, do it. A soldier doesn't say to his commanding officer, I know you told me to go over here, but I think I'll just go over here and do this. No, it doesn't work that way. The only right response to a commanding officer is the same thing as a right response to Jesus, and that is to fall in and get with the program. Get with the program of the leader. Another picture of following we have is a slave who attends to his or her master's needs, to be at their beck and call. We're here to serve Jesus, not the other way around. He's not here to serve us. We get it wrong. Another picture of following is the teaching to follow wise counsel. Get advice. Do what the counselor says. And I am reminded often that Jesus' words are sure. His example is clear. His ways are the best, even though sometimes we might not fully understand. We also see the picture of obeying our leaders, obeying the government. What that means is that we conform to the standards of the law of the land. We all get it. But for us, what that means is we're to be like Jesus. We are to follow his laws, to conform our lives to the culture of the kingdom, to follow our teacher's reasoning, to come to his conclusions. It's that prayer that we offer to God regularly. Let me see this situation like you see it, Father. So as we wrap up today, I know this has gone on a lot longer today, but as we wrap up, as we share in the Lord's Supper right now, let's be clear. To follow Jesus means to give my entire heart, my soul, my body, my mind to Christ. All of it, totally, completely. No loose ends at all. Everywhere I go, I am His. There's no room for half-hearted. His words always call for a total and complete surrender of my will to His. He shows the way. He lights the path. He leads us out of darkness into His light. When you come to Him by faith, when you came as I came to trust Him because we believed that He died on the cross to defeat the evil one and to give us this new and incredible life that we have as one of His. And as He established His authority by rising from the dead like no one ever has or ever will until we are lifted up to be with Him. You came to believe that Jesus did not come to you on He didn't come to you on your terms. Rather, you came to follow Him on His. And the eating of the bread and the drinking of the juice is where we restate that truth and we remember it again each time when we meet together. So until next time, see ya.
When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know, I won't be shaken. No, I won't be shaken. Oh, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh, shame no longer has a place to hide.